The Word of God. Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. Later that day, when evening came, Jesus said to them, "Let's cross over to the other side of the lake." They left the crowd and took him in the boat, just as he was. Other boats followed along. Gale-force winds arose, and waves crashed against the boat, so that the boat was swamped. But Jesus was in the rear end of the boat, sleeping on a pillow. They woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care that we're drowning?" He got up and gave orders to the wind, and he said to the lake, "Silence! Be still!" The wind settled down, and there was a great calm. Jesus asked them, "Why are you frightened? Don't you have faith yet?" Overcome with awe, they said to each other, "Who then is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him."
What do you think the disciples were most afraid of?
The waves, definitely.
Definitely the waves? Okay.
Well, I think they were afraid of that that he was never gonna wake up, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid about, that if Jesus didn't wake up.
And why would they be afraid of that?
Because the whole thing would be swamped and everyone would die.
I think the disciples were most afraid of drowning on the boat. It was pretty emphasized during the story that they were kind of like panicking in the boat when like all the winds were like acting crazy, and when the boats were was beginning to get swamped. So all of them were just worrying that they were going to drown, they were going to die because the weather was not really on their side.
We just had this hurricane pass through the Gulf of Mexico, and I think that the winds and the rain and the storm were scary for them, and they're in a boat, and a lot of people on the Gulf Coast were in homes on dry land, but to be in a boat in a big storm, maybe not as big as a hurricane, but still a big storm, would be really unsettling and terrifying. And I wonder if there was something deeper attached to that fear of drowning that was about what choices they had made and whether it was worth it in the end. And to see it all kind of wrap up like this would have been disappointing, maybe fear-inducing. But either way, I think the fear of drowning was primary, but maybe on a deeper level it was more existential about who they chose to be with their lives.
How did Jesus calm the storm?
Jesus calmed the storm by simply asking the winds and the waters to be calm, to 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 be still, and to stay silent. He just simply asks them.
Still, in our version today, in our translation, it has exclamation points. Silence. Be still. He silences and calms the storm with words.
By saying waves or wind or whatever, stand down and calm down. And yeah.
He's kind of magical.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's how he could calm the storm?
Yeah, because he's kind of magical.
How did Jesus calm the fear of the disciples?
What's a fear?
A fear, like something afraid. How did he make them not afraid anymore?
Because he calmed the wind down. And the ocean down.
Yeah.
I actually don't know that. But probably by trying to use his powers, maybe it would make him do it.
I don't know if the disciples settled down and experienced great calm themselves, because Jesus then asks, "Why are you frightened? Don't you have faith yet?" Didn't ask, "Why were you frightened?" And maybe this is just the translation I have, but that we have. But after that, then it says the disciples are overcome with awe, and they say to each other, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So it seems that Jesus calmed the wind and the storm with words, and then more attention and presence and words, comfort with the disciples, engaging with them, hearing their fears, seemed to calm them down.
First of all, they calmed the fears of the disciples by calming the waters and the winds, and then asking them if they have faith. Don't you have faith yet? And I think that question really calms them into reflection and really pulls out the inner faith in them that they've been locking away with realism in the real world, when the whole time, when God is on your side, everything can be victorious, you know?
Amen.
Well, what are you afraid of?
Well, nothing.
You're not afraid of anything?
Nope. Just having a good bath.
Yeah.
My fears are when I have my my electric dirt bike. When I go downhill very fast, when it's all charged up and I'm uphill, I just go blazing down.
So what are you afraid of?
My biggest fear is probably like going on a helicopter.
Okay.
Yeah.
The fears that I have now is world is becoming a lot more dangerous, so I'm just like afraid of what's happening in the world will end up in my home. And other fears that I have are like simple fears, common fears like spiders in the darkness. And yeah, that's pretty much my fears, you know.
What?
Other people are afraid. I know some people that are afraid of that are claustrophobic, afraid of small spaces. Other people are afraid of heights, you know. Other people are afraid of death and other fears like that.
I think I want to start with other people first. I think that most people are like the disciples. They fear dying in some way, or in certain ways. I think they fear being alone. I think they fear harm coming to the people they love. I think they fear not having enough. There's so much hurt and pain in the world, they don't want to experience that. I don't think most people want that for others either, but I think they're afraid of it happening to themselves. And I think that's why so many of us look to so many different things for a sense of comfort, whether it's a lot of money or a big retirement or multiple homes or cars or gadgets and technology. we look to all of these to make us feel good because we're afraid of not having enough. But I think on a deeper level, it's not just about being afraid of dying or not having enough, but it's about being afraid of not being enough or not making a difference, not having a purpose or not fulfilling that purpose. And it doesn't even have to be this grand purpose, but just if we're only here once, was it worth it? And so similar maybe to those disciples, were their choices worth it? I wonder for myself, how I live, is it worth it? And so my fear, I think, underneath most other fears, the deeper one is about meaning.
Can God calm our fears. How do you think God does that?
Most definitely, God can calm our fears because God can help us open ourselves and our hearts to our inner faith. And if we keep and maintain faith throughout our life, anything can go our way, because God will always be on our side if we have our faith close to us.
Do you think God can calm our fears?
Definitely, maybe. Yeah, probably. So yes, that's a yes. By just using his powers. So.
Can God calm our fears?
I guess so, yeah.
You think so?
Yep.
How would God calm our fears?
Well, I don't know, because he knows about his feelings.
Yeah, he knows about his feelings?
Yeah.
And our feelings?
Yeah.
Do you think that God could help you not be afraid?
Yep. Even
Yes, I do think that God calms our fears. I don't believe that fear is always a bad thing. It's just a normal thing. It's just a human thing. The way we've evolved, we were created and then evolved is to help protect ourselves. And so we have these mechanisms for fear. So when I hear Jesus saying, don't be afraid, or angels saying, don't be afraid, or Jesus asking, why are you afraid? I don't read it. I used to read it as a bad thing, that I was not having good faith, because faith is often attached to that. And now I don't hear it that way. I hear it, and I mentioned this in a sermon recently, that I think it's more about like a parent trying to help a child continue to learn and grow. And when it comes to faith, for so many of us, we're still learning. We should always be, I think. And so we're always going to be taking moments as lessons, as learning opportunities. And so I think of, riding a bicycle or something. Those of us who learned how to ride a bike, we were afraid. We had training wheels, we had tricycles. We had an adult or someone bigger than us who would help us get started. And it probably is better if we didn't learn on a hard pavement, but that adds to the fear. But the fear was normal, and it's why, instead of why did you have fear, it's more about what is causing that fear, I think is the deeper question. And so when I think about this question, can God calm our fears? I think yes, absolutely. And I think a part of that process, and thinking of how God does that, is for us to be aware of our anxiety and our fear that aren't bad. They're real and they're normal. But when we feel it, instead of clamming up, instead of locking down, instead of getting into protective mode and shutting everyone out, recognize that's there and ask yourself, what is sort of that pearl inside the clam that's making me want to protect? What is it that I'm afraid of, and what's there? And in that process, I think that the grace of God is a part of our processing in that. And here's why I say that, because in the boat, Jesus is in the boat and Jesus is asleep through the storm. And I don't understand that part. Maybe he was faking it. I don't know, just to freak him out. Who knows? But what I hear in that, or what I find in that, is that in any storm that I experience, whether it's the upheaval in society around white supremacy and racism and systemic injustice, and the parts of me that feel threatened by having to change and learn new things, and instead of locking down and saying, no, I don't want to, that's all wrong, unfair, I want to ask myself what that is. And in doing that, I think of Jesus in the boat with me. And so that storm is battering and threatening me, And in the middle of it is Jesus right there, unafraid, a non-anxious presence, ready to help when we're ready to ask. And so, and even when we're not, I think. And so with words, Jesus calms the storm and the seas. And I think with words and reflection, we can begin to learn and understand what some of our anxieties are. I think therapists are also gifts from God too, I should say. But I think that that's often how God calms our storms. Because last thing I'll say, when you look back at the beginning of this chapter, all throughout, Jesus is telling parables, and he keeps coming back to this phrase about the word is planted, the word is grown, and all this kind of stuff. And so then you get to this, and it's the words itself that calm the storm. And so I think there's something about the word, Jesus as the word, that is rooted deep within us, ready to continue to help us to grow in our faith. And fears are a part of that. Those are sort of the leaves of our faith in some ways, and doubts too. But we keep growing through that. So yes, that was the long answer. Can God calm our fears? Yes. And how? I think by being present with us through it and listening and engaging with us.